Hey, Cynthia. Cynthia, can you hear me? Oh, I can't hear you. That's really weird. I cannot hear you. I can see you talking, but I cannot hear you. I'm glad you can hear me. I wanted to get on here early so that I could get you the host. I am recording. I wonder why I can't hear. Um, um, I really don't know why I can't hear, but I don't really think it matters because I won't be participating. But let me see. I'm gonna make you the host right now. Okay. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. I'm glad you at least like got it fixed up though, and you have something to keep it stable and to rest in the sling, but God, that sucks. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I can't hear you. This is super strange. But yeah, I think you're good to go. You're recording, and your host. Cool. I will leave you to it. Yeah, thank you. Have a great meeting. Bye.
It's a bummer. How did that?
I was snowshoeing on Monday morning and I was just coming down above my house. And the snow was like slick, but also
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Huh.
Okay, that's super strange because I can hear you now, Cynthia.
You can hear
and
me?
I can hear, yes, and I can hear Whitney as well. Whitney, can you hear me speaking? Huh, doesn't look like it.
Let's see. Can we put the chat?
Yeah, it's weird because I can hear you now. Want me to ask Whitney if she can hear us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey.
No, I can't hear either of you.
Oh, that's so weird.
No sound at all.
Okay, do you want me to restart it, Cynthia? We can all log off. I can end it and then we can start over.
Can you let her know we're gonna do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh goodness, I had a typo.
Let Karen see what's going on in the chat.
Karen, can you hear us this morning?
Does your audio work?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Whitney cannot hear myself at my house and cannot hear Macy at her house.
Karen, will you say something?
Yeah, can you hear me? Better? Better, worse? Can you hear that?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Oh, I don't hear Karen either. Maybe the problem is me.
Yeah, maybe Whitney should reconnect.
Can you all hear each other?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's me.
All right. Well, I'm not going to end this meeting then.
Okay.
Do you want to type to Whitney that maybe she wants to restart? Karen,
Yeah.
That's not it.
I'm down a wing.
Whitney, can you hear me? Ah,
Oh. I'll delete this little note I had for her. Good morning, Karen.
good morning.
How are you today?
I have a goggle sunburn.
Ah.
I was being at Loveland yesterday, and yeah, I don't know if you can see it.
I can't. It's not noticeable, and it sounds like it was well worth it.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. All right, Cynthia, I'm gonna hang around here for
Okay.
you, just in case.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, is somebody making noise? I can see if I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Fuck, no. Still no noise.
Karen, you want to unmute yourself and see if she can?
Whitney, can you hear me?
Let's try that. You say something again, Cynthia?
Can you hear me?
Yay.
You
Yep,
can.
I got it.
Okay. Can you hear Karen?
Hi, Whitney.
I sure can. Seem to be
Awesome.
functional.
We're having some interesting audio issues because when we started the meeting, Macy could see me talking but couldn't hear me. Then when you came on, you couldn't hear us, but we could hear each other.
Really?
I guess it's a morning like that.
Yeah. So what did you do to your arm?
I was snowshoeing and I was just up from my house coming back down the hill. The snow was slick and sticky and I fell forward. I had in my hands and landed and my pole cranked backwards.
Yeah.
Like basically flexed my hand backwards and broke my wrist. It didn't break any hand bones.
That's good.
It essentially just disables your fingers and your ability. So I came home, took off all my gear, took a shower, washed my hair with one hand. And yeah, managed to do all that with disabled. And then went down and they put it in a soft cast in a sling, and I'm in a sling for a month.
Could be worse, I guess.
Could be worse. I could have been farther from home.
Yep.
You know, I guess these are things that happen to women when they're postmenopausal.
Yeah.
Bones can break easier.
Right.
So all the fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, it's Edna and Wolfie here.
Hi, are you guys taking part in our solar subcommittee?
If that's what you're doing, yes, that is why we're here. Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes, we are. Karen invited me. I missed your last one. Hi, Karen. And Wolfie wanted to join in because he really is interested in solar. So, and
Awesome.
I am actually a solar energy consultant for Blue Raven. So I'm selling solar and I have a lot of information about solar now. My brain has been filled heavily. So I'm very happy to be here to find out what's going on.
Great. So hopefully we'll get started here in a bit, but we're we have, we're missing some folks. So we're waiting on another gentleman, another person from the Planning Commission. And it looks like Melody just joined us and Erica. So those were the other two we were waiting on. And not sure about Billy. But we'll hold off a couple minutes and then get started because we do have, these are hour-long meetings. We've been going to an hour and a half because we're hashing details out. So just as a summary, the last couple meetings, what we did was go over definitions. So we are considering what would serve to be zoning barriers to solar. And in Nederland's case, it's not so much that there are overt barriers. There's a lack of mention in the Planning Commission. There is no mention in the comprehensive plan. So comprehensive plan and a lack of planning in inclusion in the zoning code. So what we're tackling is looking specifically at the zoning code and where there are challenges that we can work with and find solar friendly ways to deal with that. And I am down to one wing. I took a fall, so just so you know, I broke my wrist. Yeah, so I'm gonna write notes, but I'm just kind of catching up, Edna and Wolfie, where we are right now is we have talked about, and I will see if I can share my screen, see if I have what I need. Give me 1 second here. All right, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this
yeah.
was a slide presentation that was given before the Planning Commission and the Sustainability Advisory Board. I have some stuff specific to the Sustainability Advisory Board here at the end, but we also went to the DDA and it was given before ProSab. So I made these slides to promote solar, looking specifically at elements that are absent in the zoning code, just kind of considering that the benefits of solar are important and there are many benefits, and that the lack of inclusion of solar in zoning codes is seen and comprehensive plans is seen as a major barrier by the solar industry. That where you see more mention of it, you see more installations. So just kind of moving along with that, we did achieve bronze designation from SolSmart, who looks at different aspects of trying to find low-hanging fruit and less low-hanging fruit that towns can work on in order to achieve a certain level of status in making it easier to have solar both for residents and for contractors and that kind of thing. And so we really have one aspect that we would need to work on to achieve silver, and then gold would require some changes in the zoning code. So that's a little bit more long range, but I think it's possible to do this year. The comprehensive plan, the next update's probably 2023, 24. Due to COVID, it kind of pushed us out on that planning. So we will be looking at that at some point in the future, but we think we can do something with the zoning code sooner. We had been talking about definitions for solar energy. So we felt like this first page of definitions was comprehensive and kind of got us what we were looking at. It was sizes that we spent more time talking about, considering the different sizes. And just to kind of summarize what we had talked about in the last meeting, let's see. Let me go back to this. But basically, we talked about the fact that the definitions for medium scale and large scale really kind of make no difference because they're referring to what would be a community solar garden. And something like that, although it makes a quiet neighbor, some folks might rather have somebody living next to them than having a bunch of solar arrays. We talked about having that go by special review use to the planning commission, so that community solar gardens would be a special review use. It would go before the planning commission and the board of trustees in order to look at the specifics on a case-by-case basis of the lot itself and specific aspects of it to in order to consider what impacts and other associated concerns should be addressed. So that's kind of where we were for that. The small scale, I think that we felt that this one wasn't so bad, but we wanted to note that 1750 square foot of surface area or less, that's for a ground mount. And in order to support roof solar, we felt that size of the roof would be more appropriate for, if somebody wanted to cover their roof, as long as they included fire planning and the pathways that are required for fire planning, they should be able to do that, and it shouldn't count against them. So just asking the group, did I kind of summarize that well enough to get us through? Because we have
I think so.
10:30. Okay.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of where hi, Billy.
Hi. Yeah, you summarized great. Thanks.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we are. I think that's kind of about as far as we got. We spent a good deal of time talking about the sizes and ultimately came to that conclusion. And the intention, and Whitney had a good suggestion after the meeting, of really getting working definitions together that we can focus more on moving forward. So we're not going to get wrapped around the axle on specific wording. If we get a working definition that we can agree on, then we can kind of keep working forward. And if we have to tweak it at a later time, we can do that. So that is where we are at. I don't know, did anyone have any issues with the solar energy system roof mount definition? Right here.
No.
Down.
I think that sounds right. I work in that industry. I do solar roof installations. All we do at the company I work for. And it's based, actually roof, it's based on the amount of kilowatts they need and obviously how much room they have on their roof. So I think it should just be based on the roof size and what you were talking about, I guess, essentially. Not to go on, but yeah, because I think with those systems, they can vary very vastly actually in residential folks, depending on what their kilowatt needs are. So some people might only need 8 panels and other people might need like 30 panels. And it depends on how much electricity they use. So how much electricity they're going to need to, those solar panels to cover, I guess.
Sure.
So if that makes sense, what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to solar resources, how do we feel about this definition? For a given location, economically valuable access to direct sunlight for space heating, space cooling, electric generation, or water heating for an average of at least 4 hours per day, usually including solar noon over the entire year. Access to direct sunlight will usually assume a south orientation of the solar collector, but can be modified depending on the primary orientation of the solar collector. Having said that, Whitney had noted that down in Boulder, that can be used to argue, hey, you're stealing my sunlight. So I think that's just a pain point we might want to consider. How we feel about this definition and knowing, that if it's there in the definition that, hey, this is economically valuable, where on a lot of lots, it may not impact neighbors. So up in Big Springs and other places where the lots are larger, there may not be an impact to neighbors. Down in Old Town and in the central business district downtown and the neighborhood commercial toward the reservoir, that may impact neighbors. So I think we want to have some sensitivity around that.
I think this is a good definition, and so we can, I think, move move onward from that definition, leaving it as is. Just we have to be mindful later when we start thinking about how, how the rules are affected, how the definitions play into rules. That's where we'll have to be more careful. That seems to me like a fine definition of what a solar resource means.
Yeah.
We just have to be
Okay.
cautious about it later.
How do other folks feel about that?
Cynthia, I'm curious to ask Whitney, like, how has Boulder managed that? So I agree, like, this is a definition of solar resource. We think about this idea of stealing sun at another point, but how has Boulder managed that?
The ways that I've interacted with this definition and those rules in Boulder are about, usually it comes in when you put tilt ups on a roof. So tilt up sticks up from the roof. And so you just have to show that the shadow, since you're making it taller, you have to show that the shadow of that solar panel does not fall on the neighbor's property.
That makes sense. Is there also a like a prior agreement? So like who has panels first, or is that a difficult way to think about that?
I don't know that there is. I mean, who knows what old houses and what the rules were. There are parts of Boulder where things are squished together a little bit more, but for newly built things, I don't know if the house's shadow can fall on the neighbor's property. It seems like it would have to in smaller lots, but yeah, I don't know is the answer.
Is that something either you or Edna could check with the
Yeah,
about?
actually,
That would be helpful.
They generally, what a lot of solar companies do is they'll do it's called the TSRF report, and I'm trying at the moment, I'm forgetting what that means, but it's actually tree shade that you have to worry about with houses, unless you're in a community where you have houses like you have like one that's 1 story and the one that's 2 story right next to it, then yes, you are going to find that could cause some shade. So far with the folks I've talked to in Old Town, because I actually live in Old Town, and we're doing a solar panel on one of my neighbors and working on a couple of them, but the folks who haven't qualified because of trees. It had nothing to do with their neighbor's shadow of their house, but it can definitely be an issue in in communities where, like I said, you've got 1 story next to 2 story homes. Those are usually older communities though, not the newer ones. And it also depends on how close, of course, as someone mentioned, how close they are together, but it definitely can be an issue. Yeah, for whether or not folks can have it, because I know like there's already, yeah. So
I'll find out what City of Boulder's zoning code, how this is used, other than the minimal way that I've interacted with it.
That'd be helpful to me. Thank you. Because it just managing thinking about how to manage that moving forward would be helpful.
Yep.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Whitney.
Sure.
Okay. So moving on from there. And
Cynthia?
just looking at, yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, Karen.
Oh, yeah, I have just a clarification question about the previous page.
Sure.
I don't want us to get stuck on definitions for the small, medium, and large systems, but it looks like these definitions haven't changed based on our discussions at the last meeting. Is that correct?
I'm just showing you the slide presentation that was originally prepared. I don't have it updated yet.
Okay, so will these definitions be updated based on what we discussed at the last meeting?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. So basically at when I gave these presentations, it was just to go over the definitions. And for a lot of folks, this is their first experience with zoning and speaking the zoning language and thinking about dimensional aspects of zoning. But those definitions are important as well. So What we look at in section 16-33, that's what we're going to talk about today, or at least part of it, given the time that we have till 10:30, is roof height. So it's called the yard and bulk requirements. It's roof height, setbacks, and lot coverage. Those are the main pieces to that. So one of those is roof height. And there are different considerations for the roof height. So something that is ground mounted and or roof mounted. So different considerations. There are, I'm sure, some houses in the town that are 35 feet or taller just by themselves. So that is going to be one of the things that our little group gets to solve or at least discuss and try to find some workaround with that to see how we can make things easy for the process for solar, but not overlook any concerns that might come with that. So just for folks who are unaware, if you are wanting to put solar on your roof and your house is already 35 feet tall, there is a variance process that you can go through. It's a tier 3 variance for energy use. I have not seen a lot. I don't think I've seen any in the town in 9 years come forward, but there is a capacity to do that. So there is a board, the Board of Zoning Adjustment. They specifically look at variances. So it goes before them. It essentially makes a legal decision about the property, which runs as a covenant on the property. So there is that outlet for a reprieve if you are going to impact height, but this is something to consider, is that your main structures, the main square or height is 35 feet for all zoning districts. So that's for a principal, any main structure for a business building or a home is 35 feet max. And then when you get into these accessory structures that are detached, then it varies by zoning district. So the larger the district, the taller, and then smaller districts on down. Industrial could, that depends. In general, commercial is the size listed is 8,000 square feet. Central business district doesn't have parameters for the CBD, so they could cover the whole footprint. It's kind of interesting and needs some changes. I see that I spelled neighborhood wrong. Neighborhood commercial is oftentimes smaller lots around the 4,000 square foot size. High density is 4,000, medium density 8,000, low density 16, and mountain residential is usually around an acre. So like I said, the larger the lot, the higher you can go. People may want to put solar on their accessory structure or their house. Generally it's their house, but sometimes they want to put the solar on the accessory structure. So something to be aware of. And
Cynthia, quick question.
oh, sure.
So that tier 3 variance process, how long does that take, right? Because the goal of this group is to make it easier for solar to be installed.
Sure. So that could be like an 8-week process. And where that can be challenging, it's not so bad if somebody owns the property, they live in town, they're willing to go through the process. It can take them some time to get documents on there and together to go forward for the variance. It's a tier 3, so it's less expensive. I think it's $250. I cannot remember off the top of my head, with $1,000 escrow. So there is a bit of money involved. There's some time, money, and energy that an applicant is putting on the table. And that process is a challenge for folks if they're trying to do something in order to purchase a property. So that's where I see there's more stress points for folks, and they can have a long sale date that they have on the purchase, and a caveat on the purchase that if they don't get the approval, then essentially it's null and void. But a lot of people don't come forward for variances. It takes time, money, and energy. Folks will hear about the process. They like knowing that it exists, but not everyone goes through it. There are really explicit requirements on variances. There's 5 criteria. The criteria are that essentially there's something up with the lot that is making it impossible to meet with zoning requirements. So it's not the pain point is not the property owner. I'm sorry, I don't have the money to do it like this. This is how I have to do it. That is not a viable reason to get a variance. It's really, really specific to the property itself: steepness, topography, size of the lot, other considerations. And because of that aspect, or those aspects that make it a challenge in order to meet zoning, the minimum relief that can be given is what the board will grant. So if someone says, you know, I want a variance that I can exceed the height by 10 feet, the board can say, we'll give you a 5-foot variance. So it's up to them. They make that decision. The applicant cannot create the hardship. That's one of the conditions. So that's where it's really specific to the property itself. And they can't do something that's going to completely change the neighborhood. It's a bit subjective, but there are some considerations. So yeah, it's nice to know that there is that route. It's not taken, I haven't seen it in 9 years. But I think maybe the community center had gone that route to put their solar panels on their roof before my time. And yet, yes, it does add to the requirements to achieve something. So kind of the tenor with the planning commission wasn't that it was there wasn't a general sentiment of like blanket approval to exceed the height. They like the fact that there's a mechanism such as going for a variance that allows them to do that. When I spoke to the Board of Zoning Adjustment about solar, they didn't see the slide presentation. It was earlier in January. And I talked to them about what I was considering and asked them if they felt that solar should be exempt from height requirements. They did not agree with that. So they liked that there was a mechanism to come to them. So just so you know, from the point of the Board of Zoning Adjustment and the Planning Commission, that was something that they felt good that there is that mechanism, that it exists. But
Can we, so there's 2 sort of separate categories here in my mind. There's a building that's already more than 35 feet tall and you want to put like flush mounted solar on it, which does not actually make the building taller at all. But because it's already outside of the window, would you still have to go through that variance process? And then there's the other bucket where you have something that has maybe a flat roof that is right at the limit and you want to make something that sticks up another foot. So it sounds like they did not. Okay. It seems like that first bucket is a much easier sell. I mean, I think they should both be easy sells personally, but it sounds like you've already talked to the powers that be about that second one. But the first one, a sloped roof structure, in the shape of a house, doesn't have to be a house, but something with a pitched roof with flush mounted solar, and the flush mounted solar doesn't make the building taller. So it seems like it should be exempt. Like if you were going to re-roof the building, would you have to get a variance because it's too tall?
no, I wouldn't say that you'd have to do that. But if you were to expand it in any way, the general attitude about variances is it's called nonconformities. So there's a nonconformity, something does not conform to standards. And the intention is it can never be made worse. So if there's a part of a house that encroaches on a setback, or in this case, building heights, you can't expand on that height to make it worse. Right. You can only make it better. So the intention is sort of like something would live out its useful life and then eventually be taken down, and then you couldn't encroach in that same way again.
Sure. But with solar, it does stick. It sticks out from the roof, but not up from the peak.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
I'm on, this is Billy. I'm on the planning commission. I was one of those people that didn't want to go higher, without a variance. But that was also very much in our argument that any kind of pitched roof, generally, something can't go to the very peak anyways, generally, I think because of, maybe I'm wrong, with the fire access, if it's a double pitched roof, with a peak that, I guess something could go pretty much to the peak, but yeah, for the most part, everything's already going to be below the 35 feet or, below the peak of the building. And yeah, building a flush mount system, you know, isn't really the issue. It was just, there was, talk of just totally opening up solar just for sake of making it easy for people. But we were like, well, we agree with making it easier for people to put in solar, but we don't necessarily think that we need to loosen up on the 35 feet to do that. Like it's already, if it's a flush mount system in most of the residential and some commercial in town are pitched roofs already, like it wouldn't be an issue. The second one is probably more, like you said, where it could get stickier.
Yeah.
Right.
So the city of Denver has this problem with flat roofs and tilt ups. Basically, so Denver is a place where people have built a lot of new fancy homes. A lot of new fancy homes are very modern in style, and modern homes sometimes have flat roofs. And builders being builders and architects being architects, they design them to right up to the tippy top of what they're allowed. And then you really just can't put solar on them because Denver has these bulk plane rules, which mean if the solar is going to stick up beyond the parapet and it might just be like a little 3-inch parapet, then tough shit. And you can try to go round and round for a long time, but basically we just don't do tilt ups in Denver, which is a shame. I mean, sure, they did it to themselves, but
What's your take on how much a tilt up would really matter, though, if you went flush mount flat? Like, I mean, for sake of efficiency and the cost of solar, like, is that tilt always necessary, or
if you go flat on a flat roof,
keep it flat, and add another
right.
panel or something? Make up
No,
for the
flat
cost.
sucks because it gets grubby.
Okay.
It
Well,
rains and there's dust and they never get washed off. You end up with a murky scum bucket on every on every solar panel.
Yeah,
that then
that whole.
Crusty stuff.
Okay. I didn't think about that. So the maintenance is really the problem if you go flat. Yeah.
Is the weight and added weight with solar, is that a problem with a flat roof?
Sometimes not. There are different ways you can attach the solar to the roof. For flat roofs, often, especially larger flat roofs like commercial roofs, systems are often ballasted, meaning there's not a lot of punctures that hold the solar down. There's not a lot of mechanical fastening, screws and whatnot holding it down. Instead, it's all the panels are linked together by into a web of trays, and then the trays hold concrete bricks, and then the weight, because it's spread out, sort of holds the whole system down.
That's what we have at the community center.
Yeah, and that could be an issue weight wise, but just if it's a smaller system on a residence, that doesn't always spec out, because of the weight, but also those ballasted systems the ballasting works and doesn't have to be that heavy because they're so large. Essentially what you're trying to prevent is the wind from being able to pick up and flip over the solar, right? But if it's all one big blanket that's all attached and there's weight spread out over the whole blanket, you can't flip it up, and so you can't move it. Whereas with something small like residential scale, that blanket is so much smaller that it would take a lot more weight to hold it in one place. So it doesn't always spec out, but there are other ways to attach tilt ups. There's always a way, and it doesn't necessarily involve weight.
So again, these are the max heights. Now, probably a good majority of the houses comply with the main max height. because we have all those old structures in Old Town that are a single story. We've got others in the neighborhood commercial that are a single story, and some taller new structures and taller structures around the town. But for the most part, after a certain point, they're going to comply with that max height. So probably the majority of cases I would think would be compliant. There will be cases where folks are not. So just to apportion our time, because it's 7 after and we have till 10:30, just kind of thinking about, we spend a good bit of time talking about, the mechanisms for variances and other things, or consider that these heights are fairly generalized. Most people are going to comply. What are people's thoughts?
So
my first thought is like, how many houses with flat roofs or buildings are really at 35 feet in Nederland? Like any? I mean, actually, I mean, my guess is under 5 or maybe under 1.
Right. Yeah, I would think there would be too many.
Which in my mind makes it, I would say that means the variances would be not needed if there's only one building that this might apply to anyways. Go ahead and put solar on it. This is not like a rampant problem across the town. It's maybe not the hill I want to die on, but I think it's a stupid hill. It is particularly with flush mount. A flush mount literally does not make the building taller. It doesn't make the problem worse. The variance, it shouldn't even qualify for needing a variance under like basic principles of why you need a variance.
And that was the argument
really,
for the people like myself who think we should have variances when we go over 35 feet, was the fact that we knew that for the most part, pitched roofs this wouldn't be an issue for them, so they would not need the variance.
And
I guess I do feel like the one house with a variance that wants to go higher, the one house that's at 35 feet or above that wants to go higher does need to go through a variance. And if it's a new construction, they need to build it 33 feet high and have the 2 feet left to stay under 35 feet or whatever they need.
Because there is that outlet for the odd ducks to get a variance, and it's case by case. So there is more of a review of it. There's a public notice that goes out so that neighbors, if there's a situation where it's going to really impact the neighbors, their input is valuable to understand. And here again, I don't want to create more obstacles for solar, but I want us to really sink our teeth into this thought so that the recommendations that we make to the Planning Commission, that they're heard and valued for what they are.
I'm not entirely sure why I'm having a hard time letting go of this one. It just seems so unnecessary. Like if somebody buys a house that is 35 feet and 2 inches tall, they just can't put solar on it at all without going through a bunch of hoops that in reality nobody is ever going to go through. Just no solar for you because your house that you just bought is 35.1 feet tall.
Well, no, it's not no solar for you. It's solar, just go through the variance process. And if someone's buying a 35-foot house, they probably can handle the cost and hassle of the variance process. It's not that big of a deal. And the reality is, if we start pissing people off with solar arrays that go higher and higher, there's going to be a bad feeling about solar in town.
We're talking about pitched roofs where literally it doesn't go higher.
Okay, you're not hearing me. What we said on the Planning Commission is, as long as the top of the array isn't going to go above 35 feet, there'd be no need for variance. So a pitched roof is probably never going to be a problem.
Okay.
But what
I heard you say was that was your argument and that other people didn't agree with you.
No, you're not hearing me. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, not everyone agreed with me. Karen, for one, I think wanted to not have any variances at all for it. But like, my point was that if it's a pitched roof, it's a moot point because it's not. I mean, I'm agreeing with you. I don't think you're hearing me.
I do hear that you're agreeing with me, but what I did not hear is that the rest of that is the rule, that the Planning Commission agreed with that.
So
Can I
It's just,
can I jump
yeah,
in
go
here?
for it, Karen.
Thanks.
Please.
Thanks. So my sense of what this committee should be doing is making recommendations to the Planning Commission and the Zoning Adjustment Board and the Board of Trustees. So we do not have to come up with regulations that are exactly what the Planning Commission has already talked about. We're having a lot more time to study this issue. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, Billy, I think you're like misunderstanding Whitney a little bit, because Whitney is saying, what if there is a building that already exceeds 35 feet in height by 2 inches or by 6 inches? And then the solar panels that are flush mounted would also exceed the maximum building height by that 2 or 6 inches. Do we then require that owner to go through the variance process? And she is saying she doesn't think that should be the case. Is that right, Whitney?
It is the case. Also, I'm trying to get a question answered that hasn't been clear. I can't tell if Billy is trying to tell me that the rules already are the case, that as long as the array isn't over 35 feet, like if the building is right at 35 feet, then as long as the array doesn't make it taller, then it doesn't need a variance. Are you trying to say that that is already the rule?
Well, no, there is, I mean, for sake of rules, yeah, I mean, there's a height already set, maximum height. And so, yeah, I mean, our talk, and again, we just talked through it, that we didn't change any rules. That's why the subcommittee even exists, is to actually really dig deeper. And then, I mean, everything Karen just said is the fact. Whatever comes out of our subcommittee goes to the Planning Commission, the BZA, and then the BOT, and they, you know, the BOT makes the decision ultimately. The other two weigh in and give their opinion, but you're right. Like if the array, that's where I agreed with you when you first said in that whole first scenario of pitched roofs,
Yeah.
it's probably never going to need a variance because, I mean, I don't know. Even the solar array, does it ever go really right to the peak, or does it kind of go?
It does not.
Right. So that was what we talked through in the Planning Commission, and I'm ineffectively saying it now, which is they would not need variances because they would not be going higher.
Great. That's what I was trying to get at. And what I was hearing was that you personally, Billy, agree with me, but I couldn't tell if that meant that the Planning Commission agrees with me and that was sort of decided, or if that's what the general consensus was leaning towards, or if it was the general consensus was opposed to your opinion and my opinion, but that you personally agree with me.
I have a question. So with solar panels, so for example, if I use the analogy of a fence, right? There are certain requirements for fencing when they're within a certain distance of an intersection. And the intention is vision clearance, so that you're not going to come around a corner and some fence is going to obscure your vision. So there are ways that like people will build where they have a 6-foot fence and then they step it down and they go to 4 feet and then they step it back up. Is there a pseudo corollary with solar where the panels that might poke above 35 feet and 2 inches that doesn't have that row?
Sure. I mean,
am I making sense?
You are.
So that where the solar is, it wouldn't actually poke above the height. So the solar they do put on isn't above the height and doesn't have to go through a variance and isn't an issue. Isn't that just a design change, that there could be design consideration like a fire pathway, that the design consideration can include this is the max height, so you just step down the panels a little bit so that you're not going to exceed in those areas, and then it's not a problem? Because the fact is, probably the solar question is not going to come from a resident when they're trying to purchase the lot. They're going to purchase the lot. They're going to look at any zoning factors of like, hey, what can I do here? Where are my limitations? Can I build a garage? This sort of thing. But they may not be looking at like, can I have solar? So they will likely own the lot. So it's not like the pressure of the time frame of a purchase, property purchase is really bearing down on them. As a factor, it just may come up that, hey, you exceed and you would have to go through this process, or you don't exceed or you can alter the design, which is also why we don't see a lot of variances. Because people realize they could alter the design of something. If they're not set on a specific design, they could alter it, and then they don't even need a variance. They can comply. And so I think a lot more people end up going that route because you're not putting your fate into other people's hands to make a decision to decide your fate on a certain style of building or what have you. And it's easier not to ask permission, but to go forward and meet the requirements and just work around it. So probably there's a way to do that with solar, I imagine. So maybe we don't have to get around the axle with this one. That it's feasible in most cases, most people will be able to comply. Is that, anyone disagree with that thought process?
That makes sense.
I agree with your thought process, although I think it makes it unnecessarily complicated. I think that if solar is not actually making your building taller, no matter what the height of your building, you should be able to put solar on it.
And to answer your question earlier, Whitney, I think most of the planning commission, Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, agrees with what you're
Great.
with what you're saying.
Okay, well, that is still my recommendation. It sounds like no rules have been made, decisions haven't been made.
None.
That is my recommendation, or my opinion about what our recommendation should be, is that if solar is not making a building taller, no matter what the height of that building is, even if it's already over whatever the rules are, you should be able to put solar on it if it doesn't make the building taller. I also think if it does make the building taller, you probably still should be able to, but it sounds like that is a less popular opinion.
That is a less popular opinion.
I think that we should come up with the recommendations that we think would be best for the town and for the environment. And we're not supposed to like come up with recommendations that agree with what was said at a meeting, you know, that 30-minute discussion of solar at the planning commission. So,
Agreed.
you know, I think that's the wrong way to go about this. I think we as a group need to come up with what we think are the best roles for solar. And I guess we should look at it from what our goals are as a committee. Like, I think what our goals are is to make it easier and less costly for residents and businesses to install solar. And so that's, I believe going over 35 feet with panels is acceptable. I don't think we have to go over too far on that, even for the tilt mounted ones. I don't think the tilt mounted ones need to be as vertical as the ones on the community center with the current technology and solar panels.
Agreed.
So those are my thoughts.
I agree.
I would like a recommendation to be for sloped roofs, that no matter the height of the building, you can put solar on a sloped roof, flush mounted, without a variance, regardless of the height. You of course have to follow all the other rules, you know, fire pathways and whatnot, but that doesn't have anything to do with building height. And I think for flat roofs, you should be, no matter the height of the building, you should be allowed to put some sort of tilt mounted solar on the roof that, you know, sticks up some moderate distance from the top of the roof, like, you know, 4 feet or less, or 3 feet or less, something like that.
So I agree with that recommendation. I'd like to hear what others think.
I agree with the first one that, you know, with pitch roofs, you know, if it's flush, then it really should be able to be built, and a variance would seem unnecessary. As for the flat roofs, again, I don't imagine actually there's hardly any, if any at all, existing buildings that are in this category. So it's kind of moot. But for a new construction, I would say that the whole thing with the arrays and everything, because, I think we're talking about, required solar. And this isn't a different, not in this subcommittee, but required solar for larger homes. And in those homes, like, they would just need to build it so that the top of the top solar panel is 35 feet high. Otherwise, they'd need to go through a variance. But yeah, I guess I still feel like, and I know I'm not alone. The 35 feet is a limit that's important, and really hardly any buildings putting solar on, if any, would need to go through a variance, because almost all are going to have pitched roofs. And I don't think, I question whether there's any that fall into this 35 plus feet or 35 feet flat roofed, that even would need that. And I guess I'm also just thinking about, there are people in town, and I agree with you, Karen, that our ultimate goal is to do something sustainable and do the right thing. And I am all for solar. I work in the energy efficiency world, but there's some people in town that don't like solar, and we don't want to start making it so that, we create that ill will about solar with those people when things are being put up that they are going to disagree with certain things about it, like height.
Yeah, and while I think that not catering to the folks on the planning commission, those folks, most of them will still be on the planning commission when this comes to them. So understanding kind of the tenor of those discussions, I think, is important, although we're making recommendations based on our more scrutiny of solar considerations and zoning barriers and things like that. So I think it's important to understand, but not the only consideration there. One thing I do want to say is what we did not get to the last discussion, because we went over the last we went to an hour and a half the last two times, and we are 6 minutes remaining of this meeting to discuss when we want to get a proposed ordinance to the planning commission. Do we want to consider that, take a detour from our discussion on the yard in bulk and consider our timeline with the little time we have left?
Hey, Cynthia, could we get some research done on solar panel height, see maximum heights in other municipalities?
Yeah, let me make sure I heard that, because you cut out a little bit. You want research on solar panel height in other municipalities?
Yes, and in particular, if they allow the height to exceed the maximum building height.
I have seen that in some municipalities and some of the research that I've done, that they allow a limit of exceedance. So it was something that Whitney mentioned, that they could go, 4 feet over or 5 feet over that max height that it's allowed. So that is something that is seen in other municipalities, but I can certainly follow up and do more research.
I think those rules are not always specific to solar, because they include things like plumbing vents and chimneys and things like that for mechanical systems.
Yeah.
If you built a house that was exactly 35 feet tall and then couldn't stick a plumbing vent out the top of it, that's no good.
There is a, just to make it a little more complicated, in the zoning chapter, there is another consideration. It's section 16-60, and it's other things that can require a special review use. And the one of those is, basically regarding living units and how many and what the size of the building is. But the first part of that code is for that kind of mechanical equipment on the roof. And it's basically saying that all of those aspects would cause you to have to go through a special review use before the planning commission. Okay. So there is a mechanism, but that can be seen as a barrier.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, other municipalities that are similar to Nederland. maybe by location, size, terrain, mountain regions, and what they allow and disallow as far as height of solar panels. So I think that kind of information is helpful for us when we're making these decisions about what our recommendations will be. And when our recommendations come before the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees, that will be some useful information. They can see how we made our decisions. It wasn't just opinion based.
That's helpful. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
In the last 3 minutes, do we want to talk about what our time frame would be? What we are looking to achieve here for this group? I think Karen summarized the goal of this group well. What time frame are we looking to do this, other than now, right now?
How much are we hoping to include in the scope of these recommendations? And so far,
We would be talking about definitions and various aspects of the zoning code that could be considered a barrier. So the one I just mentioned, section 16-60, that notes, hey, if you have mechanical equipment and it goes above height, then that can have to go through special reviews. Maybe that one is amended with a caveat that it doesn't apply to solar within a certain height, or however that may be worded legally. But so we would consider aspects of the yard and bulk, which is the building height, lot coverage, and setbacks. Those discussions will probably take a little bit. And then other various single aspects of the code, like I mentioned, 1660. There are some other ones, performance standards, section 16-78, and some few other blips in the code that we'll be talking about. So several discussions worth for sure. Thoughts?
I bet we're going to be real slow.
Several discussions. So I don't know, like, remind me, is there, I was going to throw out like 2 more months, but is there some other kind of time frame that we're needing to consider when we decide here?
I don't know that there's anything else pressing down on us in terms of that. It's really just looking at our recommendations. We're not considering the comprehensive plan, so that's not going to be the focus of this subcommittee. Maybe people will want to be a part of it when we do discuss it for the comprehensive plan, and their opportunity, leaping from here to there. But we're going to be looking explicitly at the zoning code. So if we're meeting twice a month, maybe couple few more meetings, when are we envisioning our goal? We may not hit peak summer here, but
Well, how about 2 months?
certainly.
How about like
What's that?
trying to be done before the end of June?
I would,
I mean,
I would
I'm
shoot
just
for
kind of
that.
pulling a number,
Really, I would support that. I agree with Whitney, like this is a slow process, but I think it needs to be slow and intentional. There's a lot of important things to discuss and a lot of important perspectives to hear. One thing to think about is if we want to do another Solarize campaign, which I know there is some interest, we may want to have this ready to go before we do launch an intentional solar campaign for town.
Good point.
Good point. Is there a time, like a good time of year to launch another Solarized program? I mean, would June, having this done in 2 months at the beginning of the summer, kind of be a good time? Or, I mean, I'm thinking 2 months is 8 more meetings. So you said a few more. I agree with Whitney. It's a slow process.
2 months is 4 more meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, sorry.
Billy, I don't necessarily see another Solaris campaign like we did last year, but there is a chance that Boulder County is going to run a Solaris campaign for folks affected by the fires. And I have a question out to see if Nederland could participate in that. So that would be this fall. So But you know, I think if we could find an installer willing to work with us, we could run another Solarize campaign. It's just it can be tough up here, getting someone up here and getting someone to sign on to that capacity that we may need. So just something to think about in the back of your mind.
Yeah. Well, if 2 months isn't enough, maybe a third. But because you're right, it is only 4 meetings. I don't know. What's everyone think? I just kind of pulled that number out of out of thin air.
So I think maybe 2 months would be sufficient to have an outline of the components that, and not exactly the new municipal code. So things like if we're going to allow the height of the solar panels to exceed the maximum building height, that would be in there. If we allow more lot coverage or no setbacks. If you look at, I did a quick search about setbacks, and the Soul Smart recommends that the setbacks only apply if if a ground-mounted system exceeds, I think it's 20 feet. They say a ground-mounted height ranges from like 4 to 20 feet. So kind of those components, things that we're planning to change in the municipal code, but not the code itself. I think when we change the municipal code, we need to, when we develop an ordinance, that involves our attorney doing that. And I think maybe before we do that, we should have an agreement from the Board of Trustees on the changes that we are anticipating. Does that make sense? Do you see what I'm trying to say, Cynthia?
Yeah, I believe so. Just so folks understand, you know, we are here, we're talking about building heights. We have lot coverage to discuss, and if solar should be considered impervious surface, that'll be a good discussion. Setbacks and the various setbacks by district. I think that's going to be a long discussion. Rear, because there are front, side, and rear setbacks. Projections from buildings. I just mentioned 1660, so I didn't have that in my slides. So that's one aspect to consider. Projections from buildings. Performance standards, that's probably a pretty short discussion. And I think that kind of brings us to, that's really kind of it for what's in the zoning chapter that I could see that would need considerations. And,
Well,
yeah,
my
think
thought
that can,
was what we come up with is we have not just things that need to be considered, but what our decisions, recommendations are on those considerations. In just regular English and not as an ordinance. And then once we have agreement on how those components will change, then we develop the ordinance. That way,
so you, go ahead.
That way we present to the board, to the planning commission, the zoning adjustment board, I guess, and then the board of trustees, what our recommendations are.
So in terms of a timeline, are we thinking maybe shooting for end of July and seeing if we could do it sooner?
I think 2 months would be fine. But I would say,
how about if we say, we could either say end of July and see if we can do it sooner, or we could say 2 months, end of June, and extend it if we need to. And unless, well, I don't know what would work better for the town and planning for all these meetings and presentations to these other boards.
I mean, the new board is certainly going to get besieged with lots of new, proposed changes and that sort of thing. I don't know if anyone else saw, but Whitney had to take off from the meeting, so she has left. But I think we take the time that we need to take, and there are some real considerations here. There are some people who are going to be very hardcore proponents of solar anyway, anyhow, and there are going to be other people who don't feel like solar panels being taller than their house are a good neighbor. So I mean, we have a range in the town of opinions on that. I am not trying to take a hardcore opinion, although I'm very, I want to support solar, absolutely. But I also know the Planning Commission and know that, there will be some resistance for folks. And so I just, trying to take a middle ground for myself of seeing that not everyone is going to be elated and leaping up and down to, forward solar, even though I think it's incredibly valuable work, and especially with what's going on in the world right now. So, but I think if we need to take 3 months and we shoot for a goal, I mean, what feels better, shooting for a goal and coming out better than what the goal was set at, or shooting for a goal and realizing, well, we need extra time? It could look like a win if we put it at the end of July. And we do it sooner.
I like that feels better and would look better. And then if we need the whole time, we will be seen as wise to have given ourselves that much time.
Yeah, how's that feel to the rest of the group? End of July, and with a mindset that we could try to do it faster, and that would be what we'd want to achieve.
So you're saying by the end of July, we'd have an ordinance that we bring to the Planning Commission?
Correct. It would go through the attorney, so what is presented at the Planning Commission would have any legal tweaks, but essentially that, we would be presenting it to the Planning Commission. We could say end of July. We could say for that Planning Commission's meeting. I don't have a calendar up. Does anyone have a calendar up that they can tell me what day the 4th Wednesday of July is? I don't know offhand. So we could try to shoot for
Of July.
What's that?
The 27th.
27th. Great. Thanks, Melody. So if we want to shoot for presenting on the 27th of July, then we would need to conclude the discussion, because the packet would go out on the Friday before that Wednesday. So it would go out the previous week. So at the end of that,
I think the attorney's will need some time to write the ordinance, and so
the 20th, then let's say
check with her, and I don't know what it takes for her to do that. A month maybe. She probably has to be in on one of our meetings, and so that means we'd have to have all of our decisions done by June. So
Yeah,
I think
honestly, I mean, if I can throw it, I will not be able to attend a July 27th PC meeting, so I wouldn't mind being there. So I mean, I guess, I mean, personally, then maybe keeping the deadline at end of July, allowing the month for, the time that our lawyer needs to review it. I mean, and bringing it in August. But if you have to do it without me, it's not the end of the world, obviously. But
she will be writing the ordinance. We won't be writing it.
right.
She has a template for it. So she's basically going to take the, word template of the existing zoning code and then show it redlined as any changes that would be, added. It's not that hard.
And we have to review her redlined document
That's what the planning commission would be reviewing, is
well, however,
our recommendations. And so we could potentially shoot for having our recommendations. Well, here again, yeah, it would come with the ordinance and and any proposed changes. So I would think we would need that at least by, if the meeting's on the 27th, we'd be looking at July 20th, something around then, that she would need time to review it before the meeting. I would say at least a week.
well, I was in the subdivision subcommittee where we developed an ordinance for subdivisions with the attorney, and Cynthia, you were there too, of course. And I think that was about a 6-month process, and it kind of goes back and forth between the subcommittee and the attorney. So she redlines the chapter, and then she gives us a clean copy. We review that, make changes. So it kind of, I guess we want an accelerated schedule for this so that we can do a solar
Campaign.
Solar
They may
campaign.
have to be different. They may have to be different.
So
Given that we're starting to push toward August, so maybe the town just has to focus on their solar campaign, and we'll work on our end.
yeah, I guess a more detailed schedule would help. Like, okay, this is the end date we want. Like, we said the end of July, I guess. Okay, what does the attorney need from us? When does she need that? Maybe break it down into like a 2-week. Wow, 2 weeks is our meetings. Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking the month of July is, by July 1st, we have our recommendations done. And the month of July, we work on the ordinance with the attorney. And then goes to the planning commission, I guess, August. When do they meet? Is it the last?
The Board of Zoning Adjustment?
Oh, would it go to them first?
I mean, if we wanted to bring it to them, then if they have a meeting on they don't meet a lot unless they have a variance. So they meet in January, and then oftentimes we don't meet on the other quarterly meetings, but it would be the second Thursday in July. So it would miss that, probably have to hit their October meeting unless they had some special meetings in between there, which they may.
Yeah, PC meets the 4th Wednesday of the month, and Board of Trustees is the 1st and 3rd Tuesday. So, okay, that's all I have to say.
Okay, what do other members here? We've got a little bit of time. We definitely have a hard stop at 11, so I'd like to exit this meeting here in the next like 5 minutes. So we're not gonna stress those other folks out coming into the new meeting by us not being able to. They have to reclaim the host and take over that meeting, so we only have one host. So what do other members think about that? Trying to get recommendations to the attorney by July 1st, and then working with the attorney on those recommendations for the proposed ordinance. Feasible? I know we're down a member here. We've lost Whitney, so I want to be mindful that we're not making decisions for the group when we don't have everyone here.
This is Billy. I'll just say again, I mean, that seems like it could be doable, but really what it's saying is that we're back to saying we'll be done putting things together by the end of June. And yeah, I guess, either selfishly or whatever, like I will not be I know I will not be able to attend the July 27th PC meeting. So that would be unfortunate, but not the end of the world. I mean, part of me would like to have in August, is what I'm trying to say. At the PC meeting.
Okay.
But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well,
Though, you know, I
they
mean,
would
quite
come
honestly,
to the-
since I've been on this subcommittee, it does seem like it'd be worth it for me, because Karen will be there too, for us both to be present for the PC meeting that it's proposed at.
So if we keep to that timeline that Karen proposed, which is making recommendations by July 1st and then spending that month of July working with the attorney on it, then it would be either going to that planning commission in July if she had it ready, which would be the July 27th meeting, or it would go to the next meeting in August at the end of August. So.
Right. My preference would be August, but yep.
Yeah, August sounds good to me, and that will give us more time. You know, we could spend the month of August working with the attorney if she's available. And then we'd have May, June, and July to have all of our recommendations ready for the ordinance. I will be out for 3 weeks in July, but I don't think that should have any impact on the work that this committee is doing during July.
Okay. Okay. Are you gonna be able to attend then, Karen? Are you gonna be in Norway, inaccessible?
I, you know, I don't know, I might be backpacking. I have to look at my schedule.
Okay.
But I, I think you can do it without me. If that, yeah, I can be made available if I do have access, but there's an 8-hour time difference.
Are you gonna
Yeah.
be here on July 27th for the PC meeting, or are you gonna be gone?
I'll be here on July 27th.
Okay, so you mean you'll be gone earlier in the month for the wrap up of this subcommittee, is what you're saying?
I will be gone July 7th through the 27th.
Oh, see.
And Billy, you could always write a letter to a company, you know, if you weren't going to be able to attend that meeting. I mean, I know you'd prefer to
Okay.
be, but you could always write a letter of your feeling in the work on the subcommittee and any thoughts that you have if you want to share that. If, you know, if we somehow got through this content and had it ready for, say, the July 27th meeting.
Yeah, okay, that's true. I should be able to attend most everything between now and then. Yeah, my preference is to be there, but if I'm not, I'm not. But what we're saying now is that we'd be done by the end of June, which is fine. But I'm not sure whether, you know, Whitney, especially that she wanted to make sure we take our time. Whether she never. I don't really think I heard her say that she felt like 2 months was enough. You know, I didn't hear her opinion on that. So. But I don't, you know, what's Erica
Thanks,
think?
Edna.
What's Melody think? What's everyone else think?
Looks like Edna and Wolfie Wolf are taking off. Melody, your thoughts?
I don't have any specific preferences or anything like that, so I'm good with whatever.
Thanks.
So what if we said we would have our recommendations finished by August 1st and then spend the month of August working on the ordinance with Jennifer Mattson, the attorney, and presenting to the Planning Commission on their meeting third Wednesday of August?
Fourth. Yeah.
Fourth Wednesday of August.
That works for me. And if we get done sooner, then we'll just move it up instead of just move it forward a month. And we probably just need to ask Jennifer, you know, how's her July and August look?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Um,
Okay, great, guys.
yeah, I think based on how things went with the subdivision ordinance, I think we're going to need the extra time.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for your time today. I'm gonna jump out of this meeting here so we don't tread on the next folks' toes.
But sounds good. My apologies earlier when me and Whitney were going back and forth. I'll try to contact her separately. I wanted to say it to her, but I sometimes when I'm tired, I'm a little stressed out this morning, and sometimes when I'm not being understood, I get loud, which drives my wife so crazy. But sorry I did that to you guys.
It's okay. Thanks for that. Any last thoughts, Melody? Any last thoughts, Karen?
Nope.
All right. Well, hope everyone has a happy week and enjoy the sun.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks all, bye.
Bye.
See you.